When foreign capital flows into India, it doesn't arrive as a single, uniform entity. Every dollar, euro, or yen is strictly categorized based on the specific intent of the investor backing it. Picture global capital as a continuous stream of energy, constantly looking for high-yield destinations, but abruptly hitting the invisible barrier of a sovereign state. The Indian economy relies on this influx to fund domestic growth, yet the state has to maintain absolute control over how that capital behaves once inside its borders. That control falls to a single regulatory gatekeeper, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, or SEBI. SEBI's mandate is clear. Any foreign entity wanting to cross that barrier and operate in Indian markets has to formally interface with them and pass an institutional registration process. To understand how this system actually works, we are going to map the three distinct pathways that make up this foreign capital pipeline. Those pathways are foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, and participatory notes. Getting the classification wrong here is a serious issue. Mislabeling these incoming streams leaves the nation's macroeconomic stability and sovereign control dangerously exposed. The first pathway is foreign direct investment, or FDI. This route is designed for investors who want active, long-term corporate management. This equity pie chart demonstrates the rigid mathematical threshold for FDI. A foreign entity enters this category the moment it acquires an equity stake surpassing 10% in a single Indian company. A definitive real-world benchmark for this specific scenario occurred in 2018, when Walmart acquired a commanding 77% majority stake in Flipkart. But buying equity isn't the only way in. A foreign company can also qualify for the FDI route by establishing physical asset creation or manufacturing facilities directly inside India's borders. We see this exact physical expansion playing out right now, with Apple setting up heavy manufacturing operations in Bengaluru. The primary macroeconomic incentive for these companies to build physical plants is straightforward. It allows them to bypass heavy import customs duties that would normally eat into their margins. Secondarily, producing locally lets these multinational firms tap into India's highly competitive domestic labor pool, drastically lowering their overall production expenses. Finally, the Indian government actively engineers economic policies, offering incentives designed specifically to draw in this exact type of physical manufacturing. FDI is isolated into its own category because it represents a long-term, illiquid commitment. It directly alters both the physical terrain and the corporate landscape of the country. The second pathway is foreign portfolio investment, or FPI. This capital is driven by market speculation and financial returns, rather than corporate control. Again, the definition relies on a strict numerical limit. FPI consists of investments that deliberately stay under a 10% equity stake in any single Indian company. You will find this speculative behavior happening almost entirely within the physical and digital floors of the Indian stock markets. Historically, the oversight of this fast-moving capital was fragmented into two distinct regulatory pipelines. The first pipeline, established in 1994, was for foreign institutional investors, or FIIs. FIIs were the heavyweight global entities, large pension programs, and mutual funds. Because of their massive size, they were subjected to intense scrutiny by SEBI and had to follow strict compliance norms. Then, in 2011, a second pipeline was introduced, Qualified Foreign Investors, or QFIs. The QFI route catered to high-net-worth individuals and professional investors. Crucially, they were granted access with much more relaxed know-your-customer requirements. Running this dual-track system created a loop of regulatory arbitrage. Policymakers realized that applying fragmented oversight to agile, speculative capital was a systemic vulnerability waiting to be exploited. The critical regulatory intervention came through the recommendations of the K.M. Chandrasekhar Committee. Acting on their findings in 2014, SEBI executed a strict mandate. They legally merged the FII and QFI routes into a single unified channel. This newly consolidated regulatory category was named Registered Foreign Portfolio Investors, or RFPI. The 2014 mandate legally required every single legacy foreign entity already operating in India to re-register under the RFPI banner. The most crucial structural feature of this new system was the implementation of strict risk-based profiling for all incoming capital. This diagram illustrates how SEBI mapped the system. As capital hits the gate, investors are categorized into 3 distinct risk tiers based entirely on their potential systemic threat level. Category 1 handles low-risk entities, sovereign wealth funds, central banks, and government investors. Category 2 covers medium-risk portfolios like mutual funds and pension funds. Category 3 isolates high-risk, aggressive speculative capital from fast-moving hedge funds and private equity. While the official term is RFPI, in modern news media and market parlance, this unified group is still simply referred to as FPI. By notching regulatory friction directly to the investor's threat profile, SEBI transitioned from a passive gatekeeper into an active manager of systemic risk. But a central paradox still exists in this modern architecture. Massive amounts of foreign capital continue to access Indian markets from investors who completely refuse to register with SEBI. The financial instrument making this possible is known as Participatory Notes, or P-Notes. Technically speaking, P-Notes are classified as offshore derivative instruments. This diagram shows the core mechanism at work. An unregistered foreign investor routes their capital indirectly through an FPI that is already registered with SEBI. The registered FPI buys the Indian security and issues a P-Note receipt back to the unregistered entity. In reality, the unregistered investor never legally owns a single share of the Indian company. They simply hold a derivative contract pegged to how that asset performs. So, looking at the complete architecture, foreign direct investment is deployed for long-term corporate control over the 10% mark and for building physical assets. Registered foreign portfolio investment handles regulated, risk-tiered market speculation that stays strictly under that 10% threshold. And participatory notes operate on the margins, serving as the indirect derivative route for anonymous market participation. Mastering this structural matrix is essential for policymakers. The delicate balance between aggressively attracting global capital and tightly defending sovereign financial security dictates the future trajectory of the Indian economy.